Whispers echoed through the pristine marble corridors of Kennedy Logistics long before the actual threat was vocalized. A single chilling directive from Chicago's most ruthless syndicate leader disguised as a corporate CEO. Look at her, speak to her inappropriately, or breathe in her direction, and you will simply cease to exist. Azrael Kennedy was a man built of cold calculation and inherited violence. As the head of the Kennedy Syndicate, he operated his vast empire under the flawless guise of a legitimate shipping tycoon from a sprawling, glass-walled corner office on the 45th floor of the Aon Center. To the IRS and the high society of Chicago's Gold Coast, Azrael was a ruthless but brilliant businessman. To the blood-soaked streets of the city's underground, he was the judge, jury, and executioner. He demanded absolute perfection, unyielding loyalty, and total silence. Then there was Bianca. Bianca Gallagher was Azrael's executive secretary, and she was an anomaly in his perfectly curated world. In a corporate ecosystem dominated by size-zero assistants who picked miserably at dry salads during their lunch hours, Bianca was undeniably, unapologetically fat. She was a size 22, her body a landscape of lush, generous curves that she dressed in impeccably tailored, vibrant wrap dresses. She had a brilliant mind, a terrifyingly efficient work ethic, and a warm, genuine laugh that cut through the sterile, tension-filled air of the executive floor like sunshine through smog. To the rest of the world, she was just the plus-size secretary. To Azrael, she was the center of gravity. His obsession had begun subtly. A lingering glance at the soft curve of her throat, an uncharacteristic patience when she rambled about her weekend baking exploits, the way his knuckles whitened whenever another man stood just a little too close to her desk. But the silent, simmering protectiveness erupted into outright tyranny on a rainy Tuesday in November. Gregory, a mid-level capo who fronted as a regional logistics manager, had visited the 45th floor to drop off falsified ledger reports. Passing Bianca's desk, Gregory had leaned over, his eyes raking over the heavy swell of her breasts and the wide flare of her hips. "You know, sweetheart," Gregory had sneered, his voice a greasy whisper, "if you skipped the bagels and dropped 50 pounds, you might actually be worth looking at. Though I suppose some guys like a little extra cushion for the push-in." Bianca had frozen, her cheeks burning with hot, familiar humiliation. She had spent her entire life navigating the casual cruelty of a society that deemed her body unacceptable. She ducked her head, preparing to swallow the insult, and politely ask for the ledgers. She never had to. Before Bianca could process the movement, the heavy mahogany doors of the CEO's office flew open. Azrael crossed the Persian rug with the terrifying, silent speed of a predator. He didn't yell. He didn't reprimand. He simply gripped Gregory by the back of his tailored Brioni suit collar, dragged him into the private executive elevator, and slammed the emergency stop button. Bianca never saw Gregory again. The official company memo stated he had taken a sudden early retirement and moved out of state. The underground whisper network knew the truth. Gregory had left the building with a shattered jaw, 6 broken ribs, and a one-way ticket on a freighter to a black site warehouse in Palermo, Italy. The day after Gregory disappeared, Azrael summoned his top lieutenants to a soundproofed conference room at the Pierre Hotel. He sat at the head of the long oak table, pouring himself a glass of neat Macallan, his slate-grey eyes flat and dead. "Bianca Gallagher is off-limits," Azrael had stated, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that offered zero room for negotiation. No man in this organization is to approach her desk unless it is strictly for business. No man is to linger. No man is to attempt to date her, flirt with her, or make a comment about her appearance. If any of you look at her with disrespect, if you breathe her air, if you even think about her in a way I do not authorize, I will dismantle your lives and feed you to the lake. Am I understood? The room of hardened criminals, men who ordered hits over cold pasta, nodded in terrified unison. No one dared disobey Azrael Kennedy. The immediate aftermath was drastic, and to Bianca, it was entirely devastating. She didn't know about the Mafia. She didn't know about the threat. All Bianca knew was that suddenly, overnight, she became a pariah. Men who used to casually chat with her about the weather now averted their eyes and scurried past her desk as if she carried the plague. Executives pressed themselves against the far walls of the elevators to ensure not even a fraction of an inch of their briefcases brushed against her skirts. When she walked into the break room to get her morning intelligentsia coffee, the room would instantly clear out. Sitting alone at her desk, Bianca felt a heavy, suffocating weight settle over her chest. She assumed it was because of her size. Society's fat phobia had finally breached the professional walls of Kennedy Logistics. She believed that her colleagues found her body so offensive, so utterly repulsive, that they could no longer bear to interact with her. She spent her evenings in her small apartment in Wicker Park, crying quietly into her pillow, wondering if she should resign. The only thing keeping her tethered to the job was Azrael. Ironically, the terrifying mob boss was the only man who treated her like a human being. Azrael never averted his eyes. In fact, he watched her constantly. He ensured a fresh box of artisan pastries from Mindy's Hot Chocolate miraculously appeared on her desk every Friday morning. When the office air conditioning was too cold, he draped his bespoke $1,000 suit jacket over her broad shoulders, his fingers lingering just a fraction of a second too long against the nape of her neck. Bianca fell quietly, helplessly in love with her boss, completely unaware that she was living in a gilded cage constructed entirely of his lethal obsession. 6 months passed under Azrael's ironclad, unspoken rule. The invisible wall around Bianca was impenetrable, until a man who didn't know the rules walked right through it. His name was Tristan Hughes, a senior financial auditor contracted from Deloitte's London office to oversee the quarterly corporate compliance for Kennedy Logistics. Tristan was completely removed from the Chicago underground. He didn't know a capo from a consigliere. He only knew spreadsheets, profit margins, and good conversation. On Tristan's 3rd day in the office, he approached Bianca's desk. Azrael was out at a waste management negotiation in Cicero, leaving the 45th floor relatively quiet. "Excuse me," Tristan said, flashing a bright, disarming smile. "I'm terribly sorry to bother you, but the espresso machine in the guest lounge seems to require an engineering degree to operate. Do you think you could save my life?" Bianca looked up, genuinely startled. A man was looking her in the eye. A handsome man, at that. "Oh," she stammered, her cheeks flushing a deep rose. "Of course. It's a bit finicky." She stood up, smoothing down her navy blue wrap dress, and walked with him to the break room. For the first time in half a year, a male colleague didn't shrink away from her. As she showed him which buttons to press on the gleaming Italian espresso machine, Tristan leaned against the counter, openly admiring her. "I'm Tristan, by the way," he said, holding out his hand. "Bianca," she replied, tentatively taking his hand. His grip was warm and firm. "It's a pleasure, Bianca. You know, I couldn't help but notice you've got the best laugh in this entire dreary building. It's rather refreshing." Bianca's heart did a strange, painful flutter. She wasn't used to compliments, let alone from sleek, tailored British auditors. Over the next 2 weeks, Tristan became a fixture at her desk. Because he was an external contractor, the syndicate men in the office assumed he was a civilian who hadn't been briefed, and none of them wanted to be the one to mention Azrael's psychotic rule to an outsider and risk bringing the boss's wrath down on themselves. They simply watched in silent, mounting horror as the dead man walking continued to flirt with the boss's obsession. Tristan didn't care about Bianca's weight. In fact, he seemed genuinely captivated by her soft features and sharp wit. He brought her coffees, left sticky notes with terrible accounting puns on her monitor, and actually listened to her when she spoke. For Bianca, it was a lifeline. The crushing isolation she had felt for months began to crack. She felt visible. She felt desirable. The breaking point arrived on a Friday afternoon. Azrael had returned from a week-long trip to New York, securing a new shipping route. He stepped out of his private elevator, flanked by 2 hulking bodyguards, looking exhausted but deeply eager to see Bianca. As he approached the glass walls of the executive suite, he froze. Tristan Hughes was leaning casually against Bianca's mahogany desk, laughing. Bianca was glowing, a vibrant blush on her cheeks, her plump hand resting lightly on her chest as she giggled at something the auditor had said. Tristan reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind Bianca's ear. The temperature in the room plummeted. The bodyguards standing behind Azrael instinctively took a step back, recognizing the terrifying, dead-eyed stillness that came over their boss just before he authorized a murder. Azrael's chest tightened with a dark, suffocating possessiveness. The thought of another man touching her, looking at her, making her smile. It made his blood roar. He had threatened his entire organization to keep her safe and untouched, and some paper-pushing civilian had waltzed right into his territory. Azrael pushed open the glass doors. The click of the latch sounded like a gunshot. The syndicate men in the bullpen instantly dropped their heads, staring rigidly at their keyboards, mentally preparing for a bloodbath. "Bianca," Azrael said. His voice was soft, silken, and lethally calm. Bianca jumped, instantly straightening up. "Mr. Kennedy, welcome back. I have the quarterly reports ready for your review." Tristan turned, completely oblivious to the aura of death radiating from the CEO. "Ah, Mr. Kennedy, good to see you back. Bianca here was just giving me some pointers on the city. Actually, I was just asking if she'd do me the honor of joining me for dinner tonight at Bavette's Bar and Berth." The silence on the 45th floor became absolute. Not a single phone rang. Not a single keyboard clicked. The men in the office held their collective breath. Azrael looked at Tristan. He didn't blink. "Is that so?" "Yes," Tristan smiled. "I've heard their ribeye is spectacular." Azrael shifted his gaze to Bianca. "And what did you say, Bianca?" Bianca swallowed hard. She could feel the strange, oppressive tension in the room, but she misread it entirely. She thought Azrael was annoyed that she was socializing on company time. I haven't answered him yet, sir." "Good," Azrael said, stepping forward until he was mere inches from Tristan. He towered over the auditor. "Because Ms. Gallagher is working late tonight. In fact, her schedule is entirely booked for the foreseeable future." Tristan frowned, his civilian confidence finally faltering under Azrael's dead stare. "I see. Well, perhaps another time, Bianca." "No," Azrael said softly. "Not another time. Mr. Hughes, my associates will help you pack up your desk. Your audit is complete. Your firm will be paid in full by end of day." "But sir, The audit requires at least another— You are done, Azrael interrupted, his voice dropping an octave, vibrating with violence. Leave this building. If I ever see your face in Chicago again, you will find that our city's architecture is very accommodating for tragic, accidental falls. Tristan went pale. The threat was no longer veiled. He grabbed his briefcase, gave Bianca a bewildered, apologetic look, and hurried toward the elevators. Bianca watched him go, her heart sinking, instantly replaced by a flare of deep, uncharacteristic anger. She waited until the elevator doors closed before rounding on Azrael. "What is wrong with you?" she hissed, keeping her voice low but furious. "He was just asking me to dinner. Why did you fire him?" "My office. Now," Azrael commanded. Bianca snatched her notepad and marched into his expansive office, the heavy mahogany doors clicking shut behind them. "You had no right to humiliate me like that," she snapped, tears of frustration prickling her eyes. "He was the first person in this entire building who hasn't treated me like a repulsive monster for 6 months. He actually looked at me, Azrael. He didn't care that I'm fat. He didn't run away." Azrael stopped dead in his tracks. He turned slowly, his expression crumbling from cold fury into absolute shock. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," Bianca yelled, a tear finally spilling over her cheek. "I don't know what memo went out 6 months ago, but everyone here treats me like garbage. They won't even ride the elevator with me. Tristan was kind to me, and you drove him away." Azrael crossed the room in 2 long strides, grabbing her by the shoulders. His grip was entirely gentle, a stark contrast to the violence in his eyes. "You think they avoid you because of how you look?" he breathed, his voice laced with horror. "Bianca. My God. You beautiful, brilliant idiot." He cupped her face, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "They don't look at you because I told them I would rip their eyes out of their skulls if they did. They don't touch you because I promised to break their hands. They are terrified of you, Bianca, because they know that you are mine." Bianca froze, the breath leaving her lungs in a rush. "What?" "I own the underground of this city," Azrael confessed, the truth pouring out of him. "I am a monster, Bear. A very dangerous one. But you are the only pure thing in my life. I couldn't stand the thought of these animals looking at you, disrespecting you. I put a wall around you to protect you." Bianca stared at him, her mind spinning wildly. The Mafia? Azrael? The rule? The isolation? It wasn't because she was fat. It was because the most dangerous man in Chicago was obsessively in love with her. "You took away my choices," she whispered, stepping back, a sudden surge of betrayal hitting her. "You isolated me. You made me think I was unlovable. I made you untouchable," Azrael countered, stepping forward, refusing to let her pull away. Before Bianca could argue, Azrael's encrypted cell phone buzzed violently. He ripped it from his pocket, his eyes scanning the text message. The color drained from his face. "What is it?" Bianca asked, sensing the sudden shift in the air. Azrael looked at her, the reality of his violent world crashing into the sanctuary of his office. "Tristan Hughes isn't a Deloitte auditor. His real name is Tristan Russo. He's the youngest son of the Russo syndicate from New York." Bianca's stomach dropped. "Why would he be here?" "The Russos have been trying to find my weakness for 2 years, Azrael said grimly, reaching into his desk drawer and pulling out a matte black Glock 19. He checked the magazine with terrifying efficiency. "He wasn't hitting on you because he liked you, Bay. He was testing the perimeter. He realized you're the only thing in this world I care about." The revelation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Bianca stared at the weapon in Azrael's hands, the polished corporate facade of Kennedy Logistics shattering around her to reveal the brutal syndicate underneath. Tristan, the man who had brought her donuts, who had made her feel seen, was a mob spy. He had weaponized her loneliness. "We need to move," Azrael ordered, his voice shifting back into the cold, commanding tone of a Mafia don. He grabbed his Brioni jacket, swiftly concealing the firearm. "If Russo has confirmed you are my blind spot, you are a target. They won't wait. They'll hit us while we're exposed." He grabbed Bianca's hand. His grip was possessive, desperate. He pulled her out of the office, barking orders at his security detail. "Lock down the floor. Get the cars ready in the subterranean garage. We're moving to the St. Regis safe house." Bianca's heels clicked frantically against the marble as she struggled to keep up with his long strides. Her mind was a chaotic storm. She was furious at Azrael for manipulating her reality, devastated by Tristan's deception, and terrified for her life. They took the private elevator down to the underground parking garage. The air was thick with exhaust and damp concrete. Azrael's black, bulletproof Mercedes-Maybach S680 was idling near the exit, flanked by 2 SUVs. As Azrael opened the heavy armored door for her, the screech of tires echoed through the garage. 2 unmarked black vans slammed through the security barriers, blocking the exit ramp. The side doors slid open before the vehicles even came to a complete halt, and men in tactical gear poured out, lifting automatic rifles. "Get down!" Azrael roared, shoving Bianca onto the floor of the Maybach just as the air was torn apart by gunfire. The deafening roar of automatic weapons echoed off the concrete walls. Sparks flew as bullets sparked against the armored plating of the Maybach. Azrael didn't cower. He drew his Glock, using the reinforced door as cover, and returned fire with deadly, terrifying accuracy. 2 of the Russo hit men dropped instantly. Bianca covered her ears, pressing her face against the plush carpet of the car, sobbing. This wasn't real. She was a secretary. She organized schedules and ordered high-end coffee beans. She didn't belong in a war zone. Azrael's men, hardened syndicate enforcers, engaged the Russo crew in a brutal firefight. Amidst the chaos, Azrael slid into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut. The reinforced glass spiderwebbed from bullet impacts, but held. "Hold on," Azrael growled, his eyes feral. He threw the Maybach into drive, flooring the accelerator. The massive luxury vehicle roared to life, slamming into one of the Russo vans with the force of a battering ram. Steel crunched, and the van was violently shoved aside, clearing a narrow path. Azrael tore out of the garage, drifting the heavy car up the ramp and bursting out onto the rainy streets of downtown Chicago. They drove in silence for 20 minutes, taking a convoluted route through the lower Wacker Drive tunnels to lose any potential tails. Bianca remained huddled in the passenger seat, her hands trembling violently. Azrael finally pulled into a private, secured loading dock beneath the St. Regis Hotel. He killed the engine and let out a ragged breath. He turned to look at Bianca. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly, the ruthless mob boss melting away to reveal the terrified man beneath. "No," Bianca choked out, wiping her tear-stained face. "No, I'm fine." He unbuckled his seatbelt and reached for her, pulling her heavy, soft body across the center console and into his arms. He buried his face in her neck, breathing in the scent of her vanilla perfume. "I'm sorry. I am so fucking sorry, B. I tried to keep the darkness away from you. I failed." Bianca rested her hands against his chest, feeling the frantic, hammering rhythm of his heart. The anger she had felt in the office was still there, but it was being rapidly eclipsed by a profound realization. Azrael Kennedy, the most feared man in the Midwest, was trembling because he had almost lost her. "You didn't keep the darkness away, Azrael," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "You just locked me in the dark with you." The penthouse at the St. Regis was a fortress of luxury and security. For 3 days, they stayed locked inside, while Azrael's men waged an invisible, bloody war against the Russo family on the streets of Chicago. During those 72 hours, the dynamic between Azrael and Bianca fundamentally shifted. Bianca refused to cower in the bedroom. She watched Azrael command his empire from the dining room table, his voice cold and commanding as he ordered strategic strikes and hostile takeovers. She saw the full extent of the monster he was. And yet, every time he hung up the phone, he would turn to her, his eyes softening, asking if she was hungry, if she was warm, if she was okay. On the 3rd night, Bianca sat across from him. She wore one of his large, white button-down shirts, which stretched comfortably over her curves. "Tristan was an auditor," Bianca said suddenly, breaking the silence. Azrael looked up from his encrypted tablet. He was a spy playing an auditor. "But he still did the work," Bianca insisted, her sharp mind clicking into gear. "He was auditing our logistics routes. He was looking at the shipping manifests to find vulnerabilities. Azrael, he left his briefcase on my desk when you kicked him out." Azrael frowned. "My men swept your desk. We have the briefcase." "Bring it to me," she demanded. When Azrael's capo delivered the briefcase, Bianca opened it and spread the spreadsheets across the marble island. She was a secretary, yes, but she practically ran Kennedy Logistics single-handedly. She knew every route, every driver, every tariff. For 4 hours, Azrael watched in silent awe as the soft, beautiful woman he loved dismantled his enemy's strategy with nothing but a red pen and a calculator. "Here," Bianca pointed triumphantly to a ledger. "He wasn't just auditing us. He was cross-referencing our shipping lanes with his family's smuggling routes through the Great Lakes. Look at these timestamps. The Russos are bringing their shipments in through Gary, Indiana, right under your nose. If you hit this warehouse tomorrow night, you sever their main supply line." Azrael stared at the paperwork, then slowly raised his eyes to look at Bianca. Her hair was messy, her cheeks flushed with the thrill of the puzzle, her lush body leaning over the table. She had never looked more magnificent. "You are incredible," he whispered, standing up and walking around the island. "I'm not just a secretary, Azrael," Bianca said, looking him dead in the eye. "And I refuse to be a caged bird. If I am going to stay in this world, if I am going to stay with you, you don't get to hide me behind an invisible wall. I won't let you dictate who can look at me, because I know my worth. My body isn't something to be hidden or ashamed of, and it isn't a prize for you to lock in a vault." Azrael reached out, his large hands resting reverently on her wide hips. "I was terrified," he admitted, his voice rough. "I worship the ground you walk on, B. Every inch of you. I saw the way the world treated you before, and I wanted to burn it down. But I was wrong to isolate you. You don't need a wall. You need a throne." He leaned in, capturing her lips in a bruising, desperate kiss. Bianca responded with equal fervor, her hands tangling in his dark hair. The tension of the past 6 months, the fear, the isolation, all of it melted away into a searing, undeniable passion. The next night, Azrael's men hit the warehouse in Gary. It was a crippling blow to the Russo family, one they would never recover from. Tristan Russo was captured alive, and sent back to New York with a message pinned to his jacket. Chicago belongs to the king and the queen. A month later, the 45th floor of the Aeon Center looked the same, but the atmosphere had entirely changed. When Bianca stepped out of the private elevator, wearing a stunning, custom-made, crimson wrap dress that accentuated her gorgeous curves, the men in the bullpen didn't avert their eyes in terror. They stood up and offered a respectful, deferential nod. They didn't fear looking at her because of a psychotic rule. They showed respect because she demanded it. Azrael stood in the doorway of his office, watching her with a possessive, prideful smirk. Bianca walked past the secretary's desk, where a new, terrified intern was currently sitting, and walked straight into the CEO's office. She didn't knock. She belonged there. Azrael closed the mahogany doors behind her, pulling her against his chest. "Good morning, Mrs. Kennedy." "Good morning, boss," Bianca smiled, adjusting the heavy diamond ring on her left hand. "Now, I reviewed the new shipping ledgers. We have work to do. If you loved this dramatic tale of mafia romance, betrayal, and a fierce, curvy heroine who claims her throne, make sure to hit that like button. We bring you the most intense, heart-pounding stories every week. Don't forget to share this video with your friends who love a good mafia twist, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a thrilling new story. Drop a comment below. Would you have forgiven Azrael?